Hi, welcome to Miss Richardson's U.S. History 5-Minute Lectures. This is U.S. History Notes 2.2, Isolationism and Anti-Immigrant Ideas. It includes information that's aligned with the first section on your Unit 2 study guide. Now remember, you control this lecture. Pause if you need to, write down your questions, and rewatch as often as you need. And always be using your study guide to help you take your notes. Let's go ahead and get started. As I mentioned in the last set of notes, isolationism was a policy that all the presidents of the 1920s promoted and supported. This policy came from several different concerns. First, many Americans desired to retreat from the world involvement after World War I. The brutality of the war, the sacrifice, the horrors they had seen and heard about, all of these things led Americans to want to withdraw into their own country and focus on positive ideas, rather than the war and other people's problems. So focusing on positive aspects of life, like gaining wealth, meant Americans were worried about competition in jobs and for wealth. Immigrants were competition for jobs, as you learned in Unit 1. This led to a continued rise in anti-immigrant views, like nativism. Remember, nativists were people who wanted to keep America for the Native Americans. And in their view, the Native Americans were white, Protestant, English-speaking, Anglo-Saxon individuals. They feared not only the job competition from immigrants, but also the radical political ideas that these individuals might bring to the country. This fear of radical political ideas like communism, socialism, and anarchism led to a Red Scare in 1919. A Red Scare was a period of fear and distrust of anyone who may support communist ideologies. This meant anyone from a country that supported communism, like Greece, Italy, or any other Southern or Eastern European country, was suspicious. Joining labor unions, protesting, rallying against the government, all of those actions were seen as subversive and un-American. This was another reason that Americans supported isolationism. This policy would keep those individuals with radical political beliefs out of the U.S., and those could not harm the U.S. It would keep the country safe. So with such strong feelings around immigration and radical politics in the 1920s, it's no surprise that many Americans feared and suspected immigrants of crimes against the U.S. One case in particular, the case of Sacco and Vanzetti, demonstrates how this fear of immigrants with radical political ideas influenced society. Sacco and Vanzetti were Italian immigrants in Massachusetts in 1920. Both were actually anarchists. Both were accused of a murder and robbery in Braintree, Massachusetts in 1920. Their trial was held in 1921. Though there was very little conclusive evidence to support that Sacco and Vanzetti were guilty of the crime, they were found guilty and sentenced to death. Evidence included the fact that both had guns when they were arrested, which led them to having to admit to be anarchists in the courtroom to the jury. But there was no actual evidence that tied them to the shooting or robbery. All evidence was circumstantial or honestly non-existent. So due to their anarchist beliefs, their immigrant status, and the American fears during the time, both men were actually convicted by a jury and sentenced to death. They were executed in 1927, still proclaiming their innocence. This trial demonstrates how the fear of radical political ideas and of immigrants led to hasty decisions, the ignoring of civil liberties and rights, and how it influenced not only political actions but also courts. In the 1960s and 70s, with our improved technology, they actually went back and proved that Sacco was very likely actually guilty in this robbery and murder, but Vanzetti probably was not part of it. So, very little evidence then. New technology allowed us to find out that we really probably executed the wrong guy. And a different attitude had happened at that point. So these actions and others at the time period show the fear that pervaded America regarding those that were different in the 1920s. So we saw this fear and distrust. This is the end of U.S. Notes 2.2. I hope you learned something, and I'll see you in class with any questions.